I want to touch on the incident that happened in Dallas this weekend where there was essentially a mass panic and chaos after a fight broke out at this cheer competition. What was your initial reaction to what happened?
Yeah, so the first report I got is it was a possible active shooter, but at that time there was no evidence that there was a shooting. So obviously, panic set in, chaos set in, and and it was a lot of children involved. So that always just makes it a lot harder to deal with. But I didn't have any proof that was given to me that it was an active shooter. So I either determined just in my own mind that it was a shooting on the outside of the event, something that wasn't even related, or it was false alarm.
And when you saw, I don't know if you saw any of the coverage in terms of seeing those crowds running out and hearing stories from people who were definitely freaked out by the incident, what did you think about that? And then kind of going off of that, how do you think certain strategies could help in those situations?
Yeah, so it looked like, which is very typical in that type of situation, a very uncoordinated response from people. Everybody was doing their own thing, running their own directions, not really having the evidence of where the danger was. So with that being said, having some basic knowledge of your environment makes a big difference. One, when you go in, are you scanning for egress points? Are you looking for things outside if in an emergency of what direction would I go? I know people are having to run across highways and roads, which is a whole nother danger, especially with kids in tow. So just knowing the layout is first of your situational awareness of your environment before an event starts, especially in a large gathering. The other is having a plan with your group that you're at in an emergency. Talk about, hey, this is a meetup location we would go to. These are avenues to be able to get out of here if we need to, because it may not be a shooter. It could be anything from a fire to gas leak. And the other thing is being able to communicate with each other in it. Communication is key in an emergency, and I was reading some reports afterwards that kids were separated from groups, families were separated, coaches didn't know where their students were, and that just adds to the chaos in that moment. So having a communication plan as well, point of contact for everybody, and also knowing where the resources are. Where are emergency services at that time? Because as people are evacuating, emergency services are coming in. So there's a danger with that too, of not knowing where everybody is.
So a couple things that stood out to me about this particular incident. One, it involves, as you've said, kids and younger adults, teenagers. And two, it involved a lot of individual groups that were there. So how do those two factors play into being prepared for situations like this?
Yeah, so one of the things that when we train, especially something from a sporting group or a church group or a ministry group or any type that goes out and does events or travels together, is develop your plan before. Okay, this is step one. This is how we're going to communicate. Step two, if we get split up, this is how we're going to get back together. Identifying safety tools. Where's fire extinguishers in your area? Where's medical kits posted on the wall? Where are AEDs? A lot of people, we're creatures of habit, so we will go in a way and we will leave a way. We don't always scan our environment and look at everything around us and look at our resources, which is key to this. Also, if you're traveling as a group, have a contact back at home as well, not just with the group itself. So in case you get separated and you can't get a hold of somebody in your group, is there an alternative number or person you can contact? And carrying radios. Handheld radios for a group it changes the game on real-time communication, because as you can imagine in the emergency, cell phones were probably overused in that moment. I can imagine the towers, but handheld radios could be that real-time communication. They're cheap and you can communicate immediately.
Okay. Yeah. When talking to kids about this topic, this subject matter, and just being prepared, how should adults go about that without scaring kids? Because it can be overwhelming to talk about.
Especially younger kids. I mean, I get asked all the time, when do we start talking about situational awareness to our kids without making them afraid? There's simple games that you can do, with your younger ones, like when you're driving down the road. Hey, tell me where all the yellow cars are. Just start looking for yellow cars. And what that's doing is, one is taking their eyes off of electronics and it's getting on their environment. And as they get older, start changing the game. Hey, if you go into a hotel, before you walk into the hotel room, I need you to tell me where the nearest fire exit is. How do you get out of here if I'm not with you? And that way, when they leave a hotel room, they know exactly where that plan is. And that's any building. And so, sitting in a movie theater, when you're sitting there, where are the exits? Not just the way you came in, but other ways out. Because you may not always be there with them. And our goal is to train them in the way that they should go. And I think teaching them situational awareness is key to safety.
So would you say kind of all boils down to situational awareness in
100%.
these cases?
Yeah, most of I will say this, when bad encounters happen, when you have situational awareness leading up to it, you have a better chance of surviving that situation than being caught off guard or not knowing a path to safety. Because again, we may go in a way and may not be able to leave that way. You can take even the Las Vegas shooting incident years ago. After doing the training out there after that incident in that area, I learned the layout and where people were running back to an area that they came in, but there were other ways of protecting themselves that they were passing, like a concrete wall, like other hard objects that could have protected them.
In reality, how likely is it that a person will find themselves in one of these situations?
I think in today's time, we have a better chance than we ever had. There's a lot of things going on in our country, a lot of disruption, especially in what we call soft target areas, schools, universities, houses of worship. The more that they can be aware of their surroundings, be part of safety, don't be the reason that safety fails. If a door is supposed to be locked and secured, make sure it is. And simple things like that changes everything. But I think our chances are bigger than they've ever been because our country there's a lot of disruption happening and there's a lot of danger out there.
Absolutely. Now, turning a little bit to the operational side of things, let's say you're talking to a church group, but specifically like administrators or talking to administrators at a school on how they should be prepared on the operational side in terms of safety. What are you telling them?
Well, the first thing, it starts with perimeter security. So you want to harden your perimeter, whether that's fencing, gates, doors, security officers, police officers that are on post. It starts there. And then from there, vetting anybody that comes into your facility to the best of your ability. How do you know who's on your campus or your facility? So instead of having many ways in, channel it down into one or two that you can control. And the other is teach your staff absolute situational awareness. If they see something that doesn't look right, deal with it or report it immediately and get somebody looking. And then teaching, if it's students or others at the facility, teach them about it. If they know something's not right, it's not tattling. If it's a safety or somebody's life could be in danger, it is absolutely necessary. And we've had a lot of incidents stopped because of students have actually spoke up. And then just keeping all plans that have been put in place in motion. Again, don't cut corners with safety. Make it a priority.
So when you look at what happened in Dallas, what are your thoughts on the operational side of that and how they were prepared for that incident?
Yeah, I know that the police department got there very quickly, and there were some already on location. And what I have read and what I've been told is they were able to dispute it was not a shooter very quickly, which is very good. The problem is that information doesn't get passed always very quickly. I think they did a great job as far as responding, but the chaos of trying to gather everybody back in and settle everybody down, and now you're dealing with people that are probably terrified from it because they really thought it was. First responders did an excellent job. I didn't see anything that should have been. They always will have points that they can talk about that could be better, but they got there quickly and they did their job. I would just say for people, when you go to large gatherings like that or large facilities, it is up to you for your own safety. They are there to respond to the dangers. They can't always hold our hands and guide us. So it's up to us to have knowledge of our areas to be able to get out safely.
All right, I'm going to go back in the past and also slightly off topic.
Okay.
Going back to Columbine, one of the observations that a lot of people come back to in terms of the cafeteria scene. There were hundreds of people in the cafeteria, 2 shooters. No one really did anything to disarm the shooters. I know the shooting dispute like that has been disproven for what happened in Dallas, but say there was an active shooter. I mean, there were hundreds of people there. How do you train people in that situation?
Yeah, so the training is definitely was what matters. So on the physical response side, there's a program that was put out by a company called Alert years ago that it sounded like run, hide, fight, but they changed it to avoid, deny, defend. And what it teaches is some really good protocols, and there's other organizations just like it, is 1, if you can get away, get away. 2, if you can deny access to you, the danger to you, barricade, whatever you need to do it. But sometimes you just can't avoid it. If you even remember years ago, I think it was last year in the parade, it was at Kansas City, and people were shooting, and regular guys just took them down. I've got videos after videos I use in training of regular people that were in there in the moment, and they just acted. So when we train them how to properly, the best of our ability, to put hands on somebody, to disarm them, to use what we call weapons of opportunity in their environment, anything from a fire extinguisher to a chair. Yes, Texas is a gun carry state, but we can't always have that on us. So we have to use opportunity around us. And then at that point, you have to have the mindset of, I'm going home. And so if it's in your face and you can't avoid it, you just have to act. And the more that can act, the better chances there are surviving it. Yep.
And obviously, I mean, we don't ever want it to come down to that.
Sure.
But like you said, sometimes it is completely unavoidable.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Were you saying something?
Oh, I was, and training does matter. And a lot of people think you have to be highly trained to be able to take somebody down. No, usually it just takes somebody acting. If you trace all the active shooters really in our history and our country back, some of them have just been disrupted by regular people doing regular jobs that just acted. Sometimes they got hurt, but a lot of times they didn't. But we do know this, if we do nothing, then the shooters just get to continue on.
All right. In cases of mass panic, I think of obviously what happened on, Sunday? But also situations like, I think it was the station, there was a fire and everybody's tried to go out the same entrance.
Yeah.
It was kind of a bottleneck effect. What is the likelihood, or how often are we seeing these kind of trampling situations?
Yeah, I did see that there were some injuries where people got trampled. So doors, stairwells, hallways is what we call fatal funnels. There's various reasons, but in this case, it's because only so many people can push through an area at one time without it being dangerous. And you can imagine the panic in everybody, especially if they thought it was a shooter and they're taking kids with them. They're forcing their way through. They're not always caring about their fellow man or woman. And so it's likely to get seriously hurt in it, which is why it's important to not always just follow the crowd. If you have awareness of another way out, I mean, go all the way back to, I'll show a video of a fire that was erupted inside a nightclub. And all the people inside, majority of them tried to go out the way that they came in. Well, there were other ways out. There were even windows that you could bust out, but unfortunately people got trampled even inside that and then eventually burned up in the fire. So yeah, fatal funnels are very dangerous in an emergency because when people panic, the chaos pushes them to do things they normally wouldn't do.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of touched on it, but I know windows are a big thing.
Yeah.
How do you train people to look for windows and use those as an exit if need be?
Sure. Like, so when I train people about looking for egress points, I ask them how many exits are in this room, how many exits are in this building. Immediately, people's minds start going. They count doors, and they're sitting in a room with 6 feet of windows behind them. Now, a lot of people that are trained will go to that. And the next thing you have to do is, can I get through that window? What would I have to use? Where's the best place to break that window if I had to? Does the window have film on it? Because even think about schools now, a lot of the lower levels of schools have that protective film. You're not just going to break through that, right? So having that awareness beforehand is what the important part of it is. If even in this room, can we go up? There's lay-in tiles. So if we had to go up and over, could we do it? It may not be fun, but we could do it. So anything that you can get your body through is an exit at that point.
Okay. I feel like you kind of answered all my questions. Is there anything else you can think of that you would want to add?
I would just encourage people to, especially nowadays, we've had everything from terrorist attacks to, where this was a false alarm, but it could have been real, to encourage them to get knowledge of facilities before they go, get knowledge of cities before they go into them, even on vacation. Just know the area that you're staying in. A lot of times we do what we call travel packs for people. That's more for overseas. But we give them all the bit of information we can give them about what to avoid, where to go, where not to go, what's your resources in the area. It's important because you're going to unfamiliar areas, and if something happens, you need to know how to get out safely and survive and get back home.
At the end of the day, it's all about getting home.
It's all about getting home.